Welcome to the very first episode of The Support Leader. It's a show where we talk to people who have actually run support, not about just the polished case studies, but the real version, the 2 a.m. version. I'm Palak, the founder and CEO of IrisAgent. And the whole idea behind this podcast is simple. Every support leader right now is under tremendous amount of pressure to do AI. Almost nobody has handed them a playbook, so we're going to learn from people who have actually done this. And I couldn't have asked for a better guest for the first episode. Emre is the VP of Customer Support at Zywave. Emre, thanks for being here. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself before we jump into the mode of this conversation?
Yeah, appreciate. Yeah, glad to be on the podcast that you're hosting, Palak. And I've been in the post-sales organizations in B2B for, I'm going to just say 20 plus without giving the actual how many plus years that is. I've been a VP of support at Zywave, just celebrating my 5-year anniversary this month, actually. So,
wow, congratulations.
Yeah. The other day, I was telling folks, like when I introduced myself, I found a new phrase to introduce myself. And that phrase is, I'm a storyteller. I believe in every customer case tells the story. And my role is to tell the story to the rest of the organization, what the customers are calling about. So that's the new tagline I found out.
Awesome. Yeah, stories are intricate and those are core of what we are doing here. Let's jump into it. You have implemented several AI projects. Take me back to the beginning of the most important AI project that you did at Zywave in terms of incorporating AI in your customer service operations. What did the 30 days before the kickoff look like? Because those end up becoming the most critical days, determining the success or the failure of the engagement. And who asked for it? What was the actual goal? So just curious to see how it all started.
Yeah, so I like to think of people, process, technology. Obviously, the questions focus on the technology, but I want to put a disclaimer: the people and the process are really key components for a successful technology improvement. So I always tell people to review their processes first, and do they have the right people before they take on any technology improvements. Then picking a technology solution, it really boils down to what's the problem you're trying to solve. And you should have that answer in a very crisp manner. So whether you're implementing AI analytics solution or AI chatbot, what's the problem you're trying to solve? So that's the first part. And then I always like to, similar to goal setting with the vendors, I recommend people to pick common success factors. So you hold each other accountable, both the vendor and yourself. And if you have that discussion early on, the vendors, most of them are really honest. They could tell you, yeah, we could hit those goals, or no, we cannot hit those goals. So we are in the post-sales organization. That's what we are running. And that's what we like to do with our customers. What does good look like? What's the value-added service you are looking for? To me, that's at the foundation piece. So answering those questions helps you to pick the right vendors, assess them, and implement solutions. So that's how I look at it.
Awesome. And spot on about highlighting the goals, being honest about them, and aligning everybody on the same page. Let's talk about the data part. Like how much of that first 30 days before even starting the engagement was figuring out whether your own data was good enough and what sort of data points and artifacts are most important when it comes to AI in today's environment?
So when it comes to data, I will tell that's where most people will struggle, because garbage in, garbage out applies here too. So if you don't have your data in proper shape, and that shape could mean something else for different solutions. So for example, one of my early lessons learned when it came to implementing AI solutions, or even before it was AI, like with the chatbot, what we thought having more knowledge-based articles were a good thing, but it turned out to be a bad thing, because you have more content that may be out of shape, out of date, which means bad data. If there's bad data, it will surface wrong answers. So sometimes having more of data is not a good thing. Less might be a good thing, as long as that's quality. So depending on the situation, your data may need to be in a different shape. So like when you are looking analytics, you need to make sure connect your all data sources and they are accurate. So if you're tracking your case data, priority, severity, case classification, You want to make sure they're accurate, especially if they're picked by the humans. So that's there can be a paradox when it comes to data, but I will generally say that's where support leaders will struggle the most. And some of my wish list from each vendor I've worked with, like I wish they could scan whatever they need to connect and tell you like your health score of your data is 7 out of 10. And they will give you suggestions on, hey, this is what you need to do to get from a 7 score to 9 score.
That's a great insight. And knowledge base articles, tags, categories, historical tickets, all of that becomes the crux of the training corpus for any AI solution. And it's garbage in, garbage out if that data is not cleaned up. And then doing it on an ongoing basis as well, because products are changing so rapidly, especially in this era of coding LLMs. This definitely is a hard problem to solve.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then what was the experience as you kicked off? What were the learnings? Anything that you would do differently, or any advice that you would have for any AI, any support leader who's implementing AI right now?
So I actually would touch base on one of my advices. Make sure your data is right. Make sure your common success factors are set. Those are really important. But then also the other part is really important, which is change management. So as a leader, your goal is to communicate what's changing, why it's changing, and put the fear out of folks, because most people, they read the headlines, and the headlines that sell is AI is here to take jobs. AI call SaaS call-ups. There's lots of bad news that are out there, and folks read that and they fear what they don't know. So your role as a leader is change management. What is changing? Why it's changing? And how it's impacting that. Even having a simple one slide on that, and before you roll it out, that's really important. The second part that's really important of rolling out in a strategy is kind of having a small milestones, break the larger problem into smaller parts of a solution, and celebrate those milestones as we hit them. Those are classical best practices when it comes to leadership, and that applies to AI implementations too.
Great points. And getting AI adopted by the team is also another endeavor, because there is definitely some concern from the team members around how this will impact their end-to-end job. And I think there are different interfaces as well. Some AI solutions are operating behind the scene, just automating without everyone on the team needing to review those solutions. And then some are more operating in an assistance mode. And then finally, this is something we were discussing around before we started the recording, which is with Claude and Codex often becoming some of the entry points for these AI workflows. How do you think about different interfaces for your team? How much of there's this whole headless SaaS concept which is going on, where users don't need to go into any platform to perform workflows, but they can conversationally interact and get work done?
It's funny, the most common question I ask my vendors nowadays, do you have MCP integrations nowadays? Which is a question that I never asked a year ago. Right. So and now each vendor, that became a table stake now. Like each vendor is releasing some type of a MCP connector. So whatever we use, so we use Cloud right now. It allows us to connect different data sources. It makes it what you talked about, that headless operation, like data lives in different systems, and you get truly a 360 view by connecting different sources and talking to, in this case, let's say in a natural format, as in if you are a support leader, like you're trying to understand what case volume have generated this week, what is different over last week, or any seasonality from year over year changes, and tie it back to the product usage and look at the product data. So now you could start talking to AI in a way that you would talk to in a meeting and pull in the data. Then one of the key skills becomes is ability to know your domain space and ask proper questions to get insights.
Great points. That makes sense. And what was the toughest part in this whole engagement in terms of both automating and double clicking on auto? If you were automating some of the use cases, where did you start first? Did you start with the simplest ones? Did you start with the ones that were most deterministic but might have a big customer impact? What is some advice in terms of people who are just dipping their feet in AI, where to start first?
So the questions I like to ask is, what are the repetitive tasks we do? that we shouldn't enjoy doing it because they are by default mundane tasks. So for us, the answer to that was labeling email cases. So unlike chat and phone, where customer navigates through some type of an option to select, and if you have a product specific support model, your customer will select the product and they will potentially get routed to a specialty team, or at least that data feeds into your CRM. With email support channel, when a customer emails, there is no drop-down option or selection they go through. So one of our first part was, as we get email cases, it goes into our unassigned email queue. Automation started by how can we understand what the email case is about? So we used to have a rotation of 2 people every day that used to read all the emails. Okay, this case talks about email routing, not delivered, which product? Okay, it's a learning management system. So those folks, they just read the email and update our CRM, and that will put it in the right queue. So that was our first starting, because we asked the question, where can we save hours? That doesn't make sense for humans to spend the time. Trade the low value activity with a high value activity, because time is the same time. Your time is same as my time and everybody's time. So time is the most scarce unit. So I need to protect that for a high value relationship building activities. So the other part we looked into is one of our processes was QA process, and QA by IE is looking at the case data, looking at how we handled that workflow of case management. Did we solve their case? Did we ask the right questions? Did we document? Did we offer proactive service? There's 10 variations of metrics you could look in QA. And for us, what we looked at is a human can potentially do 8% of cases. And that job becomes a very mundane to that person after a while. The quality can be also suffer. So we looked at what are the activities we could leverage AI to get to 100%. So that was another answer. Okay, we could leverage AI. We could give the criteria we are looking for, and it can apply that same standard to every single case, which actually we find AI has a less bias than humans, because humans humans get tired. If you start your day at 8 a.m. around 4 p.m., your productivity is going to be slightly different than your 8 a.m. productivity. But AI is same at 8 a.m., same at 4 p.m. And also, obviously, can also work 24/7 if you need to scale without hiring people.
Absolutely. That's a great strategy. And it's also a very people-first strategy. What the tasks that you're highlighting are the ones that support team members really hate doing, manually reviewing the emails, reviewing long conversations on any case to identify quality issues and so on. And AI has gotten pretty good at those tasks. So on one hand, you are getting pretty high accuracy for the AI. And on the other hand, you're also elevating this mundane task from the team. One thing that we also see a lot at IrisAgent is identifying these tags and categories, doing this on a dynamic basis so that as the product is evolving, we are also updating the taxonomy and auto-classifying the intents and topics from the case data, and then finding insights like which of those topics had a huge trend or a spike, which of those spikes are connected to ongoing issues and outages. So there are lots of insights that can be inferred by these simple tags on an ongoing and in a real-time basis.
Yeah, for remember, I was talking about support leaders needs to be a better story. So your context is your cases. Yeah. And it's impossible for you or anybody to know all the communications, whether it's taking place over phone or chat or email, analyzing that type of trend lines and surfacing insights, what change. AI is really good at that. And that's not really replacing a human person, because we never done that successfully. Now AI can do that part, and it allows you to be a strategic player now, because especially for B2B SaaS, that's where I am, let's say your core customers that they need to interact with you, and the one department they interact most is customer support. Of course, for enterprise customers, you could have more high touch activities, but when you have thousands of customers, you cannot talk to every single of them. Since you cannot speak to all of them, one of the good golden nugget of information sits in customer support conversation. So surfacing, let's call it voice of customer insights or sentiments from support interactions, it's like top-notch use case.
Perfect. That sounds great. Emily, this has exactly been the kind of conversation I was hoping to start the podcast with. Very honest, very specific, and very action-oriented. Before we go, where can people find you and what are you working on that you'd want to share with fellow support leaders?
Yeah, obviously I'm on LinkedIn and love to connect with people. Oftentimes LinkedIn can be for different interactions, but I like to share my thoughts there. Importance of customer support, how we could elevate support to a key value driver for the organizations. So that's where I like to connect with people and have exchange of. I also love to learn what are the people working on next, what are the good ideas they're implementing. So that's a great platform to connect.
Awesome. This was great. Thanks again, Emre.